Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. I almost forgot my Santa hat, so let's get that back up there. And let's talk about all 6 buffed champions for Glorious Guardians initiative. Effectively, we received 6 new buffs over the last 3 months, 3 of them arriving just now, and obviously we do not know exactly how they will shape up in the contest, because Kabam can quite literally artificially manufacture the demand or value of the champions depending on what defenders they release, depending on what content they released. So this list by no means is final. This list by no means that, you know, if I don't see something in a champion yet, doesn't mean that it will not be there. So keep in mind that this is just my opinion, subject to change, kind of like the way I perceive these champions as we are getting to know them better, so to speak. So we have 6 buffs, and I think by far the weakest one, I think, is Sentry. I don't think they did a great job at all. I think they effectively buffed a champion and it changed. Well, he's better now, like, I guess, but realistically, aside from few people who are enthusiastic about Sentry in general, or are playing the game, even the people who are playing the game very casually, like how many people, you know, even if you love Aegon, how often do you like do stuff with Aegon? He doesn't ramp up as long as Aegon, but you know, in principle, even when you casually go questing and stuff like that, you just, you know, you want to finish the fights quick, and he ain't gonna do that for the most part. Nobody got time for ramping up with no real reason. Obviously, Sentry is part of the Necropolis challenge right now, but again, I think you can just do Necropolis challenge fine without Sentry either. I don't think he's going to make that much of a difference on your item count. If anything, I think Null or Wong will probably be better than Sentry for most of this challenge. So, I don't like Sentry buff. Again, creating a buff that's exclusively for long form content, for long fights, or for very, very long quests, when in reality we hardly ever get any meaningful long fights or quests. And the research chase and the value and stuff is typically in PvP or, you know, shorter type of fights, shorter quests, even like story content. It only has like 6 fights per quest, so I just don't like champions that have like a single unpopular purpose. Like if a champion gets released solely as a defender, you know, I don't particularly like it, but those champions will immediately have value for Ballions, for Alliance War, so on and so forth. If you don't play those game modes, fine. You don't have to rank up the champion. But those are typically, you know, the more resource-driven and, you know, central parts of the game. But if it's just, I have a hard time seeing him appeal to any meaningful amount of players. Did get quite a lot of hate for, you know, pronouncing Sentry's buff dead on arrival, but I still think so. Nothing really has changed. So, next buff that I like the least would be Black Panther Civil War. He's definitely a lot better. He's slightly better defender, but he's not a great defender. Don't make, you know, defender strength 2.5. That's about right. He's not a great defender. He's very easy to use, just parry a lot, and then, you know, heavy and chain your special that. I don't know why his damage is left at 1. But, I just don't think it's very practical. As I went over to Black Panther Civil War, when you look at the matchups that he's like meant to be able to take, let's say science class, he's meant to be like that, you know, great counter against. Well, first things first, he doesn't really counter evade, which is kind of like a hallmark of the science champions, or has been for a while. So, you know, there's that. Then, you know, the one of the few meaningful science defenders right now is Photon. It's not great against Photon at all, because she's not somebody you want to block and parry a lot. It will hurt, and, you know, she's going to go invisible. And overall, across other classes, you know, you can definitely do some fights, but, you know, is he a great counter to Korg? No. Is he a great counter to a 2? No. Can he do Bullseye? No. Can he do, like, Serpent? No. Obviously, we're not going to talk about mutant defenders, but, you know, is he a great counter to Fam? Don't really think so. Maybe, but doubt it. Is he a great counter to Penny? No. Like, you guys get the trend. I just don't think he does enough of the matchups that would matter. And, you know, that kind of sucks. I really wanted the buff to be good. I truly did, but this is one of those buffs that looks fine in like a sandbox environment when you do a Labyrinth of Legends fight or Realm of Legends fight or some casual path somewhere in content, but when you actually need to tackle challenges like difficult nodes and stuff like that, it's very easily to invalidate him. Obviously, he's a parry reliant character, which in itself is not a deal breaker if you do plenty of good matchups, which he doesn't, and then very minimal defensive use, and yeah, I just don't think he's up there with the relevant champions that would kind of be contending for your resources. And spot number 3 and 4, I'm actually struggling because both of the champions kind of have their problems, but I'm going to explain why I suppose edge out Sentinel a bit over Medusa. I do think Medusa's buff is making her significantly better. I do think that unless she was coming out as a 7-star, we would see Medusa more often already right now. I think people like myself, for instance, are just somewhat cautious in, having to rank 5 and ascend the 6-star champion when you're gonna be trying to get the 7-star. And you would want to rank that up instead. But she is significantly better. She does more damage. Her auto block is more reliable and almost always present now. She still absolutely destroys robots. And, she's slightly better defender. She is, able to access now... All-time blocks and some personal... Where... she's able to access true accuracy buff for a very long time, so that's very significant because now she can also bypass evade. She's definitely better. The problem with her is kind of similar that we have with Sentinel, is that I don't think he's particularly great for what you'd want her to do, or the fights that both of them can do are particularly needed, because tech class as a whole in general, I don't think they're like defensively the strongest one, and some of the champions that you'd want to counter, she just doesn't. Again, like a great example here would be Kabam just buffed Sentinel, and Sentinel is going to be also a defensive powerhouse by all the looks and indications of it, and he's arm break immune. And if tech champion's arm break immune, she's busted, which obviously doesn't go for everybody, but Fam, for instance, when you arm break him, he gets the passives, and then, again, it's not a class that typically stands on defense. She kind of coincided with Scream, and it's hard to see the scenarios where, for instance, she would be much better than Scream, aside defensively. So I do think that she is like a two-way champion, though, because she does have 3 in defensive strength, and with this, change to her Fury mechanic going up to 6 all the time, she's going to be more annoying on defense for sure. She does have solid damage, so I do hope she's more useful than it appears on paper right now. But the reason why I'm putting in Sentinel, and this is, I'm sure that people are going to disagree with me here, especially if you're not overly versed on competitive game modes as much, because Sentinel is said to be quite an annoying defender. Now, we do not know that for sure, but Sentinel has 4 in defense, and there have been some tests done, and he's incredibly tanky unless you have like a very specific option to nuke him down. But with the combination of nodes or different metas, or just by the case of battlegrounds, you having to use what you have drafted type situation, I do think he is more likely to be relevant in the game and ranked up more often and chased more often because of defense, because he will be better defender than Medusa. Again, I do think he's going to be slightly worse offensively than Medusa, and again, that kind of comes from the matchups, because if you go to the mutant class again, you do lose a lot of your damage against plenty of mutants that you should be absolutely destroying. For instance, the fact that Sentinel does not have the immunity to ability accuracy reduction or increased ability accuracy, is going to make him less than ideal for Gamora. The fact that, you can't really shock or incinerate Hammock, well, you can shock him, but you can die, takes away one of his matchups. The fact that you can't shock or incinerate Bishop at all takes away another one of his matchups. The fact that you can't really shock or incinerate Onslaught takes off another one of his matchups. You guys kind of get where I'm going for. I think they really screwed the pooch with Sentinel by not giving him plasma against mutants, especially. And therefore, there will obviously be champions that he can do relatively well. it's at the moment, I hope the best case scenario for Sentinel is that it's kind of a Red Skull situation, where he's solid offensively. He has a handful of his good matchups that people do use him, like he's great against Domino, he's great against Mr. Sinister, so on and so forth, and then he's like primarily a defender. And if that comes to be true, then he could potentially be one of the more valuable champions. He might overtake spots number 1 and 2 as well, maybe. But kind of a lot hinges up in there. However, I am putting him above Medusa because I do predict that it is more likely that Sentinel is going to be a mainstay champion for the endgame players than Medusa will be. For casual and mid-tier players, I think Medusa is going to be better, for sure. And then, in spot number 2, I'm going to be placing Purgatory. I think Purgatory is going to be a solid option for a ton of things. I do not think that Battleground's necessarily her strong suit because she does have her ramp up. But at the same time, I think if you're, bringing in 7-star rank 3, she might be, nippy and quick enough. And the best thing is that she actually seems that she does have the matchups under lock. Because depending on who you go up against, you have access to easy free armor breaks against tech champions. So she might be viable against a handful of those. Against Cosmic Champion, she's going to have basically an auto nullification ability. Plus the Neutralize, there's a great control, feeding the Mystic Dispersion, so on and so forth, going on and on and on. Then, against mutants, you're going to be stealing their power. They're going to be throwing less power, which is also quite useful against mutants and obviously enabling you to deal more damage. And against Mystics, I think her ability kind of sucks, to be honest. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And same against skilled champions. I don't think that, slow passive is too great. But at the same time, I think she will be serviceable against, at the very least, couple of mutant champions. Skilled champions. And so, why am I placing her above Sentinel, who I said I can kind of foresee, having an impact in game? And that is because I kind of see her being good for just about every game mode. I think she has that pace to be viable for like higher end questing content. I think she ramps up, fairly fast. I think in questing content or everywhere else where you can ramp her up fully, get all of her souls going, she can be quite busted and interesting. I do think the fact that she does counter, some of the more annoying meta defenders extremely well is going to be great. I think, the fact that she does Serpent obviously helps a ton. Completely pretty much shuts down the entire Cosmic class. Great. As I said, she can be viable against some of the tech champions. And for instance, Red Skull. You should be able to do Red Skull fairly well with her once, you armor break her every time you feel a bar of power. Then you have your Neutralize stacking up, shutting off his armor ups. So stuff like that I can see working quite well. Even stuff like Onslaught, power draining him, making sure that he throws less special attacks and you can be more aggressive than an average champion. I think she might be decent for. And some of the skill champions as well, as she deals with the energy damage. I think Purgatory has also a solid chance to be fairly present, and not just because of the defense. So I do put Purgatory at number 1 spot. And at the moment, it definitely looks like Deadpool is likely gonna become the meta champion because of his damage. Now, his damage did get reduced, but at the same time, it's still a lot. And as long as he's ranked up, rank appropriate, effectively, still just about everything should die in a level 2, level 1 rotation. Additionally, in some of the places where you cannot gain power that quickly, you can still get a solid amount of damage just by walking forward, dropping heavy attacks, though. So he has ability kind of like Hyperion, where you can play him with less damage, just exclusively, stalling for time and throwing your level 1s with Hyperion. With Deadpool X-Force, you can effectively just walk forwards and dance about to exclusively throw your heavy attacks and do a lot of damage per power bar filled. And then, his level 1, even without level 2, has a potential to do a solid amount of damage. His finishing ability is definitely the thing that I like most about him. You know, get slightly above 2 bars of power, throw the level 2, passive stun, going to combo, going to relic, going to another combo, into level 1, everything's dead. So basically, as soon as you get to that 2 bars of power mark, the fight is effectively sealed with, you know, your solid execution. And matchup-wise, I have seen him do Bullseye relatively well. He's not, you know, Negasonic Teenage Warhead or Onslaught or something like that, but he can do Bullseye quite well. And the fact that nobody's really immune to his Splud do buffs means that, you know, he should be, you know, still fairly good counter against Mr. Sinister himself, because it's like a big burst damage. And he should be able to do, you know, Onslaught, for instance, because he's not going to be reducing that damage either. So I have the most hopes currently for the Deadpool. It's quite simple as that. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. Which champions of these buffs are you the most excited for? And I'm going to catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the next